Hello and welcome, friends. Up till now, we have had a discussion on unemployment. We talked about the types of unemployment, then we had a discussion about income inequality also, and we talked about the unemployment problem here in India, the definitions, worker, who is fully employed, what do we mean by underemployment or unemployment. Then we talked about different types of unemployment. Some of them are temporary, some of them are bound to happen in a developing economy. We talked about the functional and the structural unemployment and found out that structural unemployment is very much natural in a developing economy like India. Then we talked about the cyclical, seasonal and the hidden unemployment. Now is the time for us to understand how do we measure unemployment rates here in India and the agencies which are involved in this. So as far as the agencies which are involved, there is the NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization, which is basically part of the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. We know that NSSO basically conducts surveys, and based on those sample surveys, it provides an estimate of the unemployment problem. Not only unemployment problem, it also provides estimate of the poverty level. So this is the job of the NSSO. Now apart from NSSO, we've got under Ministry of Labour EPF enrollments. Now EPF enrollment, you know why. EPF means Employee Provident Fund. You know that the firms which have more than 10, the number of employees is more than 10, they have to mandatorily enroll their employees into EPF and also contribute to the EPF account of the employee. You know that part of the payment, 50% of the payment is made by the employee and the rest is made by the management or the employer, which means that the industries would certainly have to enroll their members into EPF once they are recruited to work in the organization. This means if there is an increase in EPF enrollment in a particular time period, we can say that these many more jobs were generated in that particular time period. So basically the survey which is conducted by Ministry of Labour is less of an unemployment rate, but it is less of an unemployment survey or less of estimate of unemployment rates, but it is basically an estimate of the number of jobs which are generated in the economy in a particular time period. However, this can also give us a good idea. Naturally, more number of jobs created in an economy would mean less unemployment. Then again, similar is the case with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Based on the various returns filed by the companies are mandated to file some returns to the Corporate Affairs Ministry, and based on the returns which are filed by the companies, it is estimated as to how many more people got jobs, how many people are employed, how many workers are employed in these kind of firms, and based on that we calculate the unemployment rates. So this is another agency which is involved in calculation or measurement of unemployment rates. As far as the NSSO surveys are concerned, they are going to be the most reliable ones. Why? Because NSSO is an agency which is specialized, which has specialization in conducting surveys and doing the analysis and presenting a concrete picture of the actual scenario which exists on the ground level. So NSSO, we have seen that it does not only conduct surveys to find out the unemployment rates, but it also conducts surveys to find out so many other things, including, let's say, the poverty rates. We have discussed it 2 or 3 sessions ago, or maybe the child mortality rate, or the maternal mortality rate, or the percentage of malnourished children. So they are involved in these kind of surveys and these kind of projects. So they have a kind of expertise on conducting these kind of projects and making these kind of estimates, and that is why I am saying that the NSSO surveys are going to be the most reliable ones. So how do the NSSO conduct surveys? Basically, there can be have a look at the 3 different kinds of surveys which are conducted, in which 3 different kind of things are found by NSSO. So we'll have a look at them one by one. The first one is the usual status survey. Now it is different from the other 2. Basically, usual status survey basically assesses long-term unemployment rates. it is not assessing what is happening in the last 1 week, or whether the last working day, or whether the day before you were employed or not. It is basically trying to find out what has happened over a longer period of time, and this longer period of time is around 1 year. So the longer reference period is basically referring to preceding 1 year. So in these kind of surveys, the respondent is asked as to was he working or was he not working in the preceding 1 year, and if he was working, for how much of that duration of last 1 year was he working, right? So basically this is the reason why they are actually giving us an idea of long term, because we are taking into account the whole 1 year. So it's giving us an estimate of long term unemployment, right? And the people who would be considered unemployed would be those who say that they were available for work, but they could not get work for most, and most means more than 6 months in the preceding 1 year of the period. So those people would be considered unemployed, not the ones who say that they were looking for work for 3 months, while other 9 months they had some work, which means they were working for 9 months. In the remaining 3 months they were looking for work, but they were available for work, but they were not having any work to do. They would not be considered unemployed because they have worked for 9 months. They have not remained idle for most of the period of last 1 year. They have remained idle only for 3 months, so they would be considered employed. On the other hand, if somebody has worked for, let's say, only 2 months, since he has been idle for 10 months in a particular year, 10 months in the preceding year, or the larger part of the preceding period, that is why that particular individual will be considered unemployment as far as this particular survey results are concerned. This is fine. So these are called the usual status surveys. Then we've got the current weekly status survey. Current weekly status means here we are not going to talk about what happened, whether a particular individual was unemployed or employed in the last 1 year. Here we are going to talk about what has happened in the last 1 week. And here, if an individual respondent says that he was available for work, but he did not get any work even for 1 hour in the preceding week, he would be considered unemployed, right? So in currently weekly status, if a worker says, okay, I was available for work and I got work all 6 working days, I was working because I had work to do, which means he is going to be termed as employed. However, if he says that, okay, I was available for work throughout the week, all 6 days, however, I got work only for 5.5 days, I was idle half a day, or let's say 4 to 5 hours in a particular day, then he would be considered unemployed. Why? Because not working even for 1 hour will be said to be, if a person is not working even for 1 hour, he would be said to be unemployed, as far as the definitions in this particular survey are concerned. However, it is only checking the temporary time being kind of estimations it is making. It is not making estimation of what has happened over a longer period of time, over 1 year. It is making estimation of what has happened in the last 1 week. So it's a more the time frame is limited to just last 1 week. So in that case, the reference period is much small. Then we have got the current daily status. Not much difference. Instead of the respondent being asked about the last 1 week, we'll be asking about the last 1 day. And if the person has been employed for, let's say, more than 4 hours, assuming that a day's work is almost worth 8 hours, if he is working for more than 4 hours, it would be considered full person day, which means the person has been working throughout the day. If he has been working for 1 to 4 hours, he would be considered as working for half the day, and this would be considered half person day. Half person day would mean a person is employed only for half the time period. Only half of the day he has been employed. So this is how we'll calculate the unemployment here. Naturally, if he is working for less than 1 hour a day, he would be considered unemployed. So there's a slight difference in all these three. You can now understand that these two are basically looking at the most recent scenario. They are not looking at a longer term unemployment estimate, they are not making estimate for the longer term, they are making estimates only for the short term, that is the last 1 week or the last 1 day. And please understand, you are more likely, out of these two, you are more likely to get a higher unemployment rate here, because here if somebody is not working for even 1 hour, there are 6 days, and let's assume every day will mean 6 hours, or let's say 8 hours of work, so there are 48 hours. So out of these 48 hours, even if he is not working for 1 hour, that person would be considered unemployment. This would not be the case here. Last 8 hours, if he has not worked for more than 1 hour, he would be considered unemployed. But if he's worked for more than 1 hour and less than 4 hours, he would be considered employed for half the day. And if he had worked for more than 4 hours, maybe 4.5 hours, he would be considered to have worked the whole day. So the estimates of unemployment would be relatively higher in case of current weekly status. So that is something that you have to bear in your mind, keep in your mind. Now we are moving on to unemployment in India. As far as India is concerned, what is the current scenario? The current unemployment rates, I am just giving a comparison. They were around 2.2% unemployment rates in 2011-12. However, they have been reported to have risen to 6.1% in 2017-18, but the reports are yet to be released. But this is what has appeared in the media articles, that the unemployment rate in India has risen in the last few years. In 2011-12, it had hit a bottom of around 2.2%, very very low, and now it has increased to almost 6.1%. But as I said again, this is yet to be officially, this data is yet to be officially released by the government, so we are basing our discussion only on the reports that have appeared in the media regarding the results that the NSSO has got regarding the unemployment scenario in India. Now it has also been seen that in India generally the unemployment is more in I think there's a mistake here. Unemployment is more in urban areas than in rural areas. There's a mistake here, so you have to bear that particular thing in mind. There is a mistake, and I'm doing what I'm making this correction for you. More unemployment in urban areas than in rural areas. What I'm trying to tell you is that unemployment is more in urban areas than in rural areas, and there are reasons for this. In rural areas we have got agriculture, which employs quite a large number of our people living in the countryside, the residents of the rural areas. So this is one major reason that unemployment is generally higher in urban areas than in rural areas. Then let's have a look at the job scenario. As far as the job scenarios is concerned, you would find that in India most of the jobs are there in the unorganized sector. 87% of the workforce currently is working in the unorganized sector, while only 10 to 13%, and this figure is also probably an optimistic estimate, because some reports suggest that this figure could be even lower. Only 10 to 13% of the workforce is working in the organized sector, right? So in that sense, if you look at the job scenario in India, the unorganized sector is the major source of jobs as far as India is concerned. Just to make you understand what is the difference between organized sector and unorganized sector, because I think we have discussed it earlier also, I'll give you a brief idea of the difference between the two. Right now, what is organized sector? Public and private sector establish hiring greater than more than 10 number of workers. So it could be the public establishment, which means the public sector organizations, the PSU banks, the various government offices, agencies. So they are all public sector establishments, and then there are private firms also, wherein the number of workers is more than 10. So they all are part of the organized sector, right? In organized sector, so for example, as a teacher, if I'm working as a faculty in a degree college, government degree college, I am from the organized sector. Likewise, my counterpart who is working in a private institute in Delhi or in Bareilly, private management education institute, then again he is part of the organized sector workforce, right? In organized sector workforce, the wages and allowances are relatively higher on an average, if you look at the wages and allowances, you would find that organized sector pays more. And apart from that, organized sector has to be more careful about going by the rules and regulations and not violating any of them, and that is why they also have to abide by the rules and regulation regarding providing social security measures to their employees, to their workforce. And so those who are working in organized sector, they have access to social security schemes like the provident fund. We discussed the employee provident fund a little while ago. So these social security schemes would be found more prominently in organized sector, and the workforce in the organized sector will have access to these social security schemes. You can go to any government institute, you can go to any government agency, you would find, and you talk to people there, even the person who is at the lowest level in the organization hierarchy, he will be having a provident fund account. The provident fund account is one which gets contribution from the employee and the management or the employer, and this money which gets collected in the provident fund account is then handed over to the employee at the time of his retirement, so that he can sustain himself in his retired life, right? So this is what the role of provident fund is, and you find that in organized sector, workforce has access to provident fund and other social security schemes, right? For example, in organized sector, if you are facing some medical issue, you can go on a sick leave, right? And you might be also paid while you are still in this sick leave. So sick leave that you have availed would be a paid leave. On the other hand, in the unorganized sector, what happens? Let's have a look at the unorganized sector, right? Owners and employees of small organizations, small organizations, farmers, casual laborers who are working in the fields, in the construction sector, self-employed people, the retailers. Then we have got people, the barber or the cobbler, the mochi, the nai, people of all this sort, those who are giving private tuitions, employees of small organizations, farmers, which is a big community. You know that 50% or around 50% of our population is still employed in agriculture, and they are farmers. So these many people and all those who work in these kind of activities, they are part of the unorganized sector. Unorganized sector, you would find that the wages and allowance are much low, and there is no access. Now this is a big problem. There is no access for the workforce in the unorganized sector to social security schemes, and that is why, have you ever seen a rickshaw puller retiring? He would never retire. Why? Because if the moment he retires, he would not be able to earn anything, and he would simply not be able to provide for his family and to even feed himself. So he does not retire. He does not have any provident fund account to bank upon. So he does not retire. If he someday falls sick, he simply does not have the choice not to go for work on that day, because if he doesn't go for work, he would not be able to earn anything. This was the reason why so many people have been migrating back to their villages after the COVID-19 crisis and the lockdown which followed the crisis. So the people in unorganized sector, generally they don't have any access to any social security scheme. However, the current Modi government in its first tenure came up with the Atal Pension Yojana, which was basically meant for these workers in the unorganized sector. Now please understand that they are 87% of the total workforce. So Atal Pension Yojana is basically a contributory retirement scheme in which part of the contribution would be made by the beneficiary and a bigger chunk would be contributed by the government, and then after attaining the age of 60 or 65, the beneficiary would be given this lump sum amount. He can get this lump sum amount converted to monthly payments so that he can sustain himself once he retires or once he's grown too old to work. So these kind of schemes have now been started by government to provide social security to these workers who belong to the unorganized sector, the Atal Pension Yojana, Atal Pension Scheme, right? Now, okay, I'll ask you one question. Workforce in which of these sectors can organize themselves into unions or labor unions? Naturally, organized sector. You would have seen, you go to any government PSU, you would find the worker union. Not only the worker union, manager union would also you would find. You go to the banking sector, you find the All India Banking Association, All India Banking Employees Association. So it's a union of the workers who are working there. So these unions are to be found in the organized sector. They are more vocal about the uh, benefits that their members receive, and that is why they are able to bargain for better benefits from their employers. This is another reason why people workforce in the organized sector, they've got better wages and better working conditions and a better access to social security schemes also, right? The problem for India is that most of our people are there part of the unorganized sector, right? Now just I gave you this background because I had discussed and I had told you about the fact that only 13% of our jobs are generated in the organized sector. Most of them are generated in the unorganized sector, right? As I said, in India we need almost 70 lakh jobs every year if we want to keep this unemployment rate uh, in control. Now please also understand that the unemployment rate is expected to rise in the first first and the second quarters of the current financial year, that is 2020-2021, because of the ongoing COVID crisis and because of the job losses because of that particular crisis, right? Now let's have a look at the unemployment in India, the causes of unemployment in India. Number one was jobless growth. Post 1991, you would have read about the LPG liberalization, privatization and globalization in the year 1991, and it was expected to give an impetus to the economic development of the country. That did happen, but that did not materialize in um an equivalent increase in the jobs, equivalent growth in the jobs in the country. And still you find that in the last 20-25 years not many jobs have been generated despite India growing its GDP at a very decent pace. So growth in job is much less than the GDP growth rate. One reason is that there is a lot of mechanization, which means now most of our industries, they are dependent more on automatic machines than on labor, and naturally more of machines would mean less potential to employ workers because most of the work would be done by machines, and the machines can work more efficiently, they can perform greater quantum of work, and they can work throughout the day. Naturally jobs would be lost, there would be less jobs available in such kind of capital intensive industries where most of the work is done by machines. Then there is also a decrease in public sector employment. Earlier public sector used to be a large employer, but now specifically after 1991 it was decided that government would close down all the loss making PSUs. Then since the licensing regime was relaxed, there was less requirement of people, there was less requirement of employees in the public sector agencies and in public sector organizations, and that is why there was a decrease in public sector employment. Less number of jobs were created in the public sector in the last 3 decades. Then again there's the performance of our what do we mean by this, the secondary sector. The manufacturing sector has been below par. Manufacturing sector, we have discussed this also. You would remember that when we were talking about the different sectors in the economy, the primary, secondary and tertiary, we had said that the manufacturing sector is very labor intensive. Generally it is, at any rate it is more labor intensive than the service sector, which means that more number of jobs would be generated in the manufacturing sector. However, in India we have seen that the manufacturing sector could not grow at a very high rate, and still it is contributing just around 20-24% to the overall GDP of the country, while on the other hand service sector is contributing 60% to the overall GDP of the country, which means that less jobs will be created because service sector by its nature is less labor intensive. It requires less number of workers to perform the same amount of task. So what we need basically is a very good performance of the labor intensive secondary sector or the manufacturing sector, if they perform well, naturally more jobs would be generated because they, by nature, they are more labor intensive. Then there have been economic slumps in export markets. You would recall that 2009 there was an economic slump in America, and slowly it engulfed many other parts of the country. America is among our major export markets. We sell so many textiles and products like gems and jewelries in America. So if there is a slump in the economy of the export markets, what will happen? They will stop exporting, they will stop importing products from India. So all those workers, all those industries who are producing these export products to be sold to foreign countries, they will have to incur losses in such a case. And that happened 2009 also. There was a decrease in import by America, which meant the gems and jewelry sector in India, which employed a large number of people, and which is basically found in areas surrounding Bombay and Surat in Gujarat. So many jobs were lost, and there was an overall decline in income levels, and jobs were also lost just because the demand in the export market, which included USA, decreased. So whenever there is a slump in the export markets to whom we supply, naturally it is going to impact the number of jobs in our economy also. For example, in the COVID-19 crisis, it has been estimated that the exports would decline. In fact, they have started declining. If you have a look at the picture in April and March, you would find that the exports have declined. And this has happened because of slump in demand in export markets, because they themselves are suffering from the same issue, the same kind of crisis. So whenever there is a slump in the export market, naturally the rate of job growth would slow down in India. What are the solutions? We've got some solutions, and these solutions are basically emerging from the causes only. So what are the solutions? Have a look. Prioritizing the manufacturing sector in India. You know why? Because the sector is more labor intensive and it has more potential, more capacity to absorb workforce, and that is why government has come up with Make in India scheme. I hope you remember what is Make in India scheme. We are incentivizing not only the domestic firms but also the foreign firms to set up their plants here in India, to set up their production and manufacturing facilities here in India. One objective is to reduce dependence on imports. Other main objective is to increase the pace of job growth in the economy. Then the second solution is we could focus more on labor intensive industries. There are some industries which by their nature they are more labor intensive. They actually hire more number of workers, and most of them are basically manufacturing enterprises, not from the service sector. Now have a look at the textile. Now textile industries, their leather industries, construction industry is a major. Apart from textile, construction sector is a major source of jobs for people here in India. Then we've got the handlooms, Hatkarka Udyog. Then we've got tourism. Tourism is one service sector industry which is very, very labor intensive. Then we've got gems and jewelries. I gave you an example of what happened to Surat in Gujarat and Mumbai because of the 2009 recession in America. So we are here referring to the same gems and jewelry sector. In India, we basically import uncut, unpolished gems and then gold, and then we process it into polished gems and gold jewelry, and then again export it to foreign countries. So naturally, if there is a problem with the export market, as we saw earlier, there would be a decrease in pace of job growth in these sectors, but still these sectors are they need to be prioritized because they are labor intensive. They require a lot of workforce. They employ a significant number of our people. They employ a significant number of workers, and that is why government should focus more on these sectors, and government is doing that. They provide various incentives to these sectors. Have a look, textile sector, leather sector. Why? So that these sectors could grow and they could generate more jobs for the unemployed youth here in India. And then again, private sector to contribute major share of growth in employment. We have discussed this. We have seen that after 1991 the government has limited its role as far as various businesses is concerned. Government has also limited its inspection role, monitoring role, and naturally there is less number of jobs, there are less number of jobs which are getting generated in the government sector, which means that the bulk of job growth or the bulk of jobs have to come in the private sector. So the private sector will have to contribute major share of growth in employment, and for this to happen, government should ensure various incentives for the private sector. There can be so many incentives, and government is doing that so that the private sector could grow and could hasten up the pace of increase in jobs here in India. So that's all in this particular session. With this, we have completed our fourth unit in which we talked not only about poverty and employment, but we also had a brief discussion on inequity. We'll be having a test very soon. I think you have been told the time and the date for the test. After we have completed the test, we would move on to the next unit, and for the test I would suggest that rather than just looking at the bullet point or trying to cram them up, it would be a better idea for you to actually listen to the whole lecture and then take down your own notes, because the bullet points, they do not, whatever is mentioned in the slide is not going to comprehensively cover the whole topic. What is being said here by me, of course, is going to be also very, very important. So please also keep taking notes. Thank you very much for